Welcome back to the Tipton Thrives Podcast. My name is Riley, and I'm joined with the mayor of the City of Tipton, Mayor Keegan Schmicker. Welcome back.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, we're here starting the new year strong. 2025 is off to a great start, especially for you. Welcomed a new baby over the Christmas break.
Yes.
Congratulations.
Thank you for that. We snuck it in at the last day of the year, collected that tax credit. But yeah, mom's doing well, baby's
Awesome.
doing well. People keep asking me, I suspect I'm the first mayor to have a child in office, but unsure of that. But at the moment, really just happy that everyone's healthy and doing well. So
Good.
Thank you for that.
Yeah, it's exciting into your first year in office.
Right. The busier gets busier.
Yeah, definitely. And speaking of busy, we're here to kind of talk about what's really going on in the first part of 2025 and kind of look ahead to the year as a whole. And before we get into that, though, if you want to listen to, this is now the second episode of this. The first episode is live on our YouTube channel and also on Spotify. So if you just search YouTube City of Tipton, our channel will come up there. We also do the county council or the city council meetings are viewed on our YouTube, but then we're also on Spotify as well. If you just search Tipton Thrives, the podcast will pop up. So many of you watch here on Facebook. You can also save it for later and listen to it later. So 2025 is going to be a busy year for the city of Tipton.
Yes.
We talked a lot about 2024, not necessarily playing catch up, but it was kind of just getting our feet wet in terms of this is everything we have to do and keeping up with the transition from the new administration. But now shifting to 2025, more focus, more strategy into what you have planned for the city. And one of the first things we want to talk about is the public safety building.
Yeah.
There was several studies that were done last year, kind of evaluating where we're at and the path forward. So if you want to kind of talk about next steps for that project.
Yeah. This is obviously an old project. It's been talked about for several years now. The structure itself, the original structure was built in the early 90s, I think 92, 3, or 4. And one of the realities that we face now is that both the fire and police department have doubled its size based on the number of people working on shift that they employ for their departments have doubled since that original building was constructed. So what we know is that the building currently does not meet the needs to provide an adequate, efficient, effective facility for these police officers and firefighters. But so one of the studies that we did last year was to do a facility assessment, trying to understand from the perspective of a police officer and firefighter, how do they use the space? How would they like to use the space? And then thinking even a little futuristic, where do they see the growth in their departments, or where do they see the changes in law enforcement, firefighting that might impact their facility? And so from that feasibility study, we were delivered as a component, as a second piece to that, which was an assessment of the current structure. What are the things that are operable? What are things that are deficient? Even some health and safety concerns, both for the law enforcement officers, firefighters, but also the general public who might want to engage with the facility. So as we work toward a larger improvement to the structure, we know the current structure right now is not large enough for the needs of the department, but we're not in a position as a city to invest in that yet. The price tag to that is quite large, as you might suspect, especially as you see notice from other communities around Tipton. Those price tags get pretty hefty.
Yeah, I think Noblesville's planning
correct.
in the
Westfield's got a
process,
facility. Yeah. Even Jackson Township, I think, in Arcadia has got a project. But what we want to do, we know that there are concerns at the facility that need completed. To say today is too late. So what we're going to do is invest the remainder of the general obligation bond dollars, which were secured back in 2022. And the primary purpose for those funds to be secured was for public safety. We're going to invest the remainder of those funds into making some critical facility improvements to make sure that we address the priorities within that space to at least make the facility operate safely and more effectively than it does today. And that has been helped. Both the Chief Bittner and Chief Stout have helped in creating that priority list. We're working through some of the back-end logistics to make sure we can get that out to bid as soon as possible. But it's my expectation right now that those facility improvements will be done in 2025.
Awesome. And, public safety has always been a strong focus for you. Last year, a big emphasis was making sure everybody was fully staffed. So this just continues that focus on public safety, making sure our first responders are taken care of so that when we need them most, they're there and they're able to perform their jobs effectively. So the money topic, obviously it costs a lot to build a public safety building. I don't even want to take a guess at it, but I know you probably have a rough number in your mind. But speaking of money, one way for cities to collect money is through grants. And that's something that I know you're going to lean heavily on, is finding unique grant opportunities for the city of Tipton. We've already done several of those, but one of the big announcements coming into this year is the hiring of a grant writer for the city of Tipton. Do you want to talk about that, how it came about, why you think it's necessary, and then kind of also break down what different grants can they apply for? Because I'm sure there's so many different grant opportunities out there that people might not even be aware of.
So the actual effort starts back in 2022, I believe. And when I was still at the Chamber of Commerce, and I was trying to lead an effort to secure a community-wide grant writer that can help our community at large secure more grants, because what we know is that we're leaving money on the table. Being a rural community, there's a lot of grant opportunities that do exist. Can't solve every problem with a grant, and of course with the grant, there's always that consideration of a match, which has a way of getting in the way sometimes, exploring grants. But then I circled back with the group I was in conversation with back in 2022, and to my surprise, or maybe just encouragement for the city of Tipton, was that the group was still in a position. This is a for-profit organization. They've got experience providing these grant services to other communities. One of the owners of the company used to be the grant writer for Noblesville. So really encouraged by the conversations that we had had in the past. In fact, when I was in discussions with him last year, we did an assessment for the city of Tipton on some topics to see what grants existed that we might be able to pursue. And so just through those conversations, got to a point where what we really settled on was we want to be very purposeful in this relationship. It's easy to say, yeah, I know you're a grant writer and I'm going to use you for grants that might come up. But what ends up happening is you forget that those relationships exist. So I formalized that relationship. We're going to put them on contract for the entirety of 2025. And I'm hopeful that with the success in 25, longer. But the reason really is because we're a small community. We're a community who hasn't grown in decades. And so what we see is our fiscal resources continue to be strained. There's so many needs that come up, so many, whether it's even organizations in the community who need support, or even our own departments, capital projects, vehicles and equipment, those needs continue to outpace our revenues. And so the need for us to secure a grant writer has been very obvious for several years. In fact, this is a very common feedback from the community, this idea that we should secure a grant writer to help us. And so we've done just that. We've secured an individual, or rather a group of individuals, to be quite honest, who are going to help support us through 2025. And our expectation, where we're going to be applying for no fewer than 2 grants a month throughout the entirety of 2025. And this will impact Parks and Rec, our new Tipton Arts Commission that's been stood up. Public safety has quite a few grant opportunities that exist, and anything else in between, whether it's community development, infrastructure, economic development. There's a lot of grants out there that I really want Tipton to be more strategic about and purposeful about, and this is going to be one of those ways to help us in that endeavor.
And grant writing is a very specialized. If you don't know what you're doing when filling out a grant application, you can get disqualified just by a technicality that you didn't fill something out correctly. So having the people who have done this is their career, they do it specifically, just increases the chances that we're likely to get approved for different grants. And so, what was the process like previously? Say, obviously, the city's gotten a bunch of NDOT grants and things like that. Was it just up to department heads to fill out those grants?
Yeah, correct. And we've had individuals, Community Crossings is one that's been managed by the department between the municipal services superintendent and the city engineer, and we pretty well have that figured out. There's a lot of experience that our city engineer possesses, and through his experience in the past has been able to secure success for the city. But then beyond that, if a department had interest in pursuing a grant, they took it upon themselves, either a member of the department. We had a former police officer who recently left for Westfield. He had a lot of experience, or at least some experience with grants, and so he found himself applying for those, really trying to help push and encourage the department. Diana Tomlinson at the Parks Department, she herself, even just recently, and I think we're going to talk about it here coming up, has applied for a grant and grants in the past. So what I wanted to do was provide them with the expertise. I don't feel like that they should be the ones really drafting the grant opportunities. Really, their mission is going to be identifying the grant opportunities, creating the projects, or vice versa, and then connecting with this grant writer so they can put the information in the squares. That way it helps keep Diana, for example, strategic about the Parks Department. And she can focus on the strategies that we're trying to implement, and then just leverage somebody else to help us figure out the fiscal side of the project.
Yeah, they're playing a supporting role because it is a very specialized process.
Exactly, yes. And getting more complicated.
Yeah, all the time.
Yep.
So you mentioned the parks,
Yep.
And Diana and all the great work that she does.
Yep.
And one of the awesome parts about Tipton, and I think almost everybody has positive feedback, is the city park.
Yep.
And moving into 2025, very early into the year, actually, hopefully just whenever the ground thaws out, there's a big project coming to the city park. Do you want to go ahead and I think this is the first time it's publicly introduced?
I think so. I think we alluded to it possibly in the last podcast, but this has been a project we've been working on, and kudos truly to Diana Tomlinson for leading this effort, bringing the grant to our attention, and then just working collaboratively with her to get a project scoped. What we're going to do is replace one of the larger playground equipments that's visible in the city park. It's the one that's blue and orange. Of course, probably very well known to the community. It's one that we're experiencing a lot of maintenance issues with. I think that piece of equipment, I was told, and I hope this is true because I'm going to say it, was installed in the early 90s. So the playground equipment itself is 30 years old. And so we're going to make the first and the most intentional investment into the city park playground equipment than we've seen in the last 30 years, and truly going to replace it with a structure that is probably meets modern expectations for families. It'll have the ability to range in ages. And then what has been very important to me coming into this position is accessibility. So we're going to add some accessible components to this piece of playground equipment. The surface itself is going to meet ADA compliance to make sure individuals who may be not as mobile or capable can get to the facility, engage with the various aspects of it, and engage in the playground equipment like every other individual who comes to the park. So really excited about this investment. It's really going to help take the city park to another level. Like you said, people have fond memories and experiences of the park, and this is going to make it even better. Really trying to create these spaces for families to come and enjoy. And I think we'll probably be able to produce the formal press release soon so they can see it. And just to share with you, it is going to be an exciting piece of equipment for the kids in the city of Tipton.
Yeah, now we just need the warm weather to come back around.
Correct. Tentatively, we're thinking it's going to be springtime, of course, so the weather can thaw, but Mother Nature sometimes has a mind of her own.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. I know I have fond memories. I wasn't born in Tipton, but my dad used to teach at the Tipton High School, and it was probably late 90s, early 2000s when I was a kid, and it's the same equipment, which is kind of crazy to think about. It's more like just the safety factor of it having updated.
And those are the issues we were having, is some of the weld joints were failing, and the protective materials were corroding, so you could see bare metal, and it was rusting. So we made a decision, Diane and I, that we were going to replace the piece of equipment. It was time. It's beyond time to make that investment. So really excited about that.
And again, that came through
grant opportunity, absolutely.
And that just emphasizes, again, the fact of the importance of having, obviously Diana did a great job securing this one, but being able to secure more and more grants that just open unique opportunities like this across the entire city. So that's great. Really looking forward to that one. I know a lot of people will be with kids as well, but kind of to wrap things up, the last topic of note, we can't talk about parks without mentioning the baseball field project.
Correct.
And while we don't have anything that we can officially set in stone or mention, there are some small updates that
Correct.
we can talk about.
Yeah, so last time we talked about being able to secure the $2 million bond to support the baseball project. It's been one of the big boxes that we needed to check before we take some meaningful next steps. Really having some fantastic conversations with other groups in the community about a joint project. And what I like about this idea is that we all acknowledge that we need the facilities, but then there's other needs in a community too, whether that's a school or other youth sports, whether it's soccer, softball, just trying to get an assessment. And we're trying to approach it, again, being very purposeful. I've used that word several times already. So we've collected the data from these groups, understanding how many players they have involved, what their practice schedules look like, when are their games hosted, very analytical information to help us understand what is the need, and then scoping, which we'll begin to do now that we're synthesizing that data, is what is the total need in the city of Tipton, and how can we begin to address it. So partnering with these groups, and I left the school, not intentionally, but left that off the list, getting together with the school too to understand their needs too, because as we've come to learn, there's some baseball facility needs that they've got as well, to understand maybe there's a way that we all work together to help address this community need in a way that helps us not only address the needs of today, but then also maybe is futuristic too, or at least puts us in a position to invest in the future as well. We're expecting, the plan right now is the summer of 2025 that we're going to have a project to present to the community. And one that I feel very encouraged by. We've got the right group of people working on this and a lot of collaboration happening with community members, which feels really positive.
Yeah. So things are happening. Right. We can't always come out and just say because,
things aren't coming out of the ground yet.
Yes.
But we have a really great group right now working on this, and everyone seems willing not only to make their own concessions, but then work collaboratively together. And I think it's going to be a really positive message for the community.
Awesome. Well, 2025 shaping up to be a good year.
Yep.
Might be very busy and stressful for you.
It's going to be
the new baby too. That just adds another factor there. But really looking forward to all that is coming to the city of Tipton in 2025, and we'll be updating you along the way.
Yep.
Again, this is a monthly podcast. We publish it once a month, but if you aren't following us on Facebook already, make sure you follow the City of Tipton on Facebook. We post there almost daily, but everything important coming from the city will be posted on the city's Facebook page. And one quick reminder, go like us on YouTube, follow the podcast on Spotify if you want to listen to it in your car, and we will catch you in February for the next episode of the Tipton Thrives Podcast.